All right, we're here today to talk about the violence in the city of Milwaukee. We're going through another violent spring with many more homicides than normal, and there's been no disagreement that this is a big problem. There has been a lot of disagreement around what should be done about it and who's really to blame. We're here today with James Causey, an editorial page columnist, and joined from Madison by Schneider, another editorial page columnist, and we want to talk about that. And let's just start with James. What is your take on what's happening out there, and what should we do about it? We have to do something.
Well, what's going on is that a lot of people are being shot and a lot of people are dying. We know that. What can be done about it? Well, the mayor and the police chief, they came in and they talked to us, and they're doing a media sweep about what should be done. And quite honestly, I'm a little disappointed because their solution is put more police out there, more police overtime, and stricter gun laws. I think I would like to hear something more. And I think we need to look at violence as a public health issue. And what I mean by that is if 49 or 50 kids at Marquette University came down with the whooping cough or any kind of disease, you would have public health officials come in and inoculate the disease, find out what happened, and try to cure everybody that's there and prevent the disease from spreading. I think we need to take the same type of approach when it comes to violence. We can't police ourselves out of this problem. We can't have another gun law that will be like the silver bullet to fix this issue. I think it needs to happen at more of a grassroots level. I think we need to have more people at the table like we did when we focused on reducing teen pregnancy. And we were able to get teen pregnancies down 50% since 2006, which was absolutely phenomenal. But we have to look at it as a public health crisis. Until we start looking at it with a different lenses, we can't fix this problem because there are a lot of people in the central city who are suffering from mental diseases and issues. They've seen a lot of trauma in their lives, and we can't expect these people to just go out and find work and be fine when they have all these other issues that that needs to be addressed.
Christian, what's your take on that? I mean, is that the right way to look at it, or is there something much more concrete to look at in terms of who's in charge and what are they up to?
Yeah, I mean, I think the mayor's response to this has actually been pretty weak. I mean, he's been out there blaming the legislature for passing concealed carry and those things, and I think that's ridiculous. The numbers I don't think support it. I mean, between 2013 and 2014, there was actually a drop of I think 17% in murders in the city, and that was after concealed carry had already passed. So. I don't think the numbers actually support that, and maybe it's his prerogative to try to pass the blame to somebody else, but that's clearly what he's doing. I mean, the problem with the inner city, as I see it, and James can obviously speak to this more, but I mean, there are just so many links in the chain, and it's so cyclical, where you have poverty that creates crime, that creates single families, that creates a bad education system, which then creates poverty, which creates crime, which creates all this stuff. And so it's just kind of, it runs in a cycle. And I might not even have everything in the cycle right. Maybe it's, crime that causes poverty, or, single families that cause poverty, and all those things. So when you look at public policy, politicians and things, what they can do, I mean, there's limited avenues on the things that they can do. And crime, James mentioned, increasing penalties for gun possession. Maybe that's a good idea, but then, you end up with a situation where you have more black men in prison for longer periods of time, where they can't be there for their families, which causes, more poverty, more, single families. You have things like, you can take criminal penalties for drug possession, which I think is a good idea, and get rid of mandatory minimums. So, men can be back there with their families if they're not doing hard drugs or things like that. But then again, that changes things. Are you saying that those things are okay now? So, and then you have things like education. I mean, Republicans come in and say, okay, well, we want school choice, and Democrats too. and then they get pushed back from the education establishment. So at each entry point kind of into the cycle, there's pushback and there are trade-offs. So, I mean, that's, I think, what frustrates everybody is the fact that there's really no good answers.
Well, is this, I mean, to go back to James, is this, and both of you, is this a case where it's a problem where we don't have the right laws on the books? Is it a problem with enforcement of the laws? Is it more a personal responsibility and a community-based thing? What can we even agree on where what's the source of the problem, or is it all of the above?
Well, it's all of the above and more. I mean, you need to throw poverty, you need to pour segregation, racism, and everything else and mix it all into a bowl, because it's all of that stuff. And the problem happens when we try to say, if we fix this one thing, everything else will fall into place. Well, don't get me wrong, Chris. I sort of disagree with you about the gun laws. I do think that there are too many guns in the central city. I think there are too many bad people with guns who use those guns to commit crime in the central city. And they need to learn a lesson that I can't run around here firing off a gun and I'm already a felon and putting other people's lives in danger. They need to get the message that they can't continue to do this. And so I do understand how, and I would support a mandatory minimum for someone who is a felon in possession of a gun. However, there are so many other things that I wish that they will look into to address this problem. And one thing that I'm going to mention, and I'm giving this away in my column, is, the A.L. Smith site, right in the heart of the central city, used to house 8,000 people used to work there. And it's been vacant for years. They need to figure out, the next mayor or whoever is the mayor needs to figure out, how do you get this operating again so you could get people back to work? That needs to be priority number one.
Christian, do you have a take on that? I mean, jobs James was talking about, but also this idea of where is the breakdown right now in terms of what, if we know where the spot where the breakdown is, maybe that's where you go to try to attack it and make a quick difference.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little more skeptical of James that increased gun laws would actually make a difference. I mean, you saw in the shooting, the tragic shooting last week after the car accident, that the guy that had the gun was a felon that wasn't supposed to have the gun. So I mean, there's already laws on the books to keep people from having firearms. So I don't think an increased law is really going to make all that much difference. I just think they ignore the law altogether. As far as jobs, it's funny coming from the conservative perspective that earlier this year a group of Republicans came and they had a proposal to have these enterprise zones where in the most impoverished part of the city there would be areas where there aren't any taxes on businesses and there's right to work and all that kind of stuff to try to boost jobs in those areas. And they were immediately attacked from people within the city saying, well, these white Republicans come in here and try to mess with us and now they're interested. And so I think a lot of Republicans just say, look, if we're going to get attacked for trying to help things, why bother? And in the process, Tom Barrett's just going to keep getting elected, and all the people in Milwaukee are just going to keep electing the same people and have the same problems, I think.
If I could piggyback off of that, though, the problem with that is that they elected to do this by themselves, and they did not include everyone at the table so they could figure out, will this work or not? I mean, you can't just come up with ideas in a vacuum and say, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to try this, and without hearing what the other side has to say. That's what worked with teen pregnancy. That's why that was successful. That's why we were able to get the numbers down, because we brought everybody to the table and we said, it doesn't matter if you're a liberal or you're a conservative. What we have to do is fix this problem, so come and sit down at this table and let's talk about it. You just can't say, oh, we're going to try this and we don't care if you listen or not, but let's see if this works. We've been trying that for years, for decades, and this is and look at how far we've gotten because we've been trying things that way. We haven't been able to move the needle, and the only way it's been moving is downward. So, and that's a bad thing. So we have to figure out a way to get people at the table talking and trying to fix this problem.
Well, unfortunately, I think we're out of time, and unfortunately, I'm sure we'll be able to talk about this many more times as we go forward because the issue isn't going to quickly go away. So thanks, Christian, and thanks, James, for joining us.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks.